Orange County is a center for medical devices, none more vital than heart surgery products. Heart valves are getting more reliable and less intrusive all the time, so patients can live longer and better lives. And that's very good news for Edwards Lifesciences, the biggest public company in Orange County. Its stock is at an all-time high. Its annual sales are approaching $3 billion. It has nearly 10,000 employees, nearly 4,000 in Orange County alone. And the man who has driven this success, longtime CEO Michael Mussallem. So what's the outlook for fighting heart disease? Can't we improve the healthcare system? And can OC hold on to its big companies? I'll ask him right now on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by 5 Point. 5 Point is an independent real estate development company with assets under management across California. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.
Memorial Care is transforming the way healthcare is delivered, keeping our communities and businesses healthy by guiding them on the path to wellness with easily accessible hospitals, physician offices, and outpatient centers. Memorial Care, leading the way.
Here I had you all relaxed, and now
I'm totally
you're good.
I'm totally good.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Well, hi, I'm Rick Reiff. Welcome to Inside OC, and I'm talking with the CEO of Edwards Lifesciences, Michael Mussallem. Michael, great to have you on.
Thanks, Rick.
So let's talk about what you're in the heart business. You make heart valves. How are heart valves? How many lives are being saved nowadays because of the kind of product you make?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, the number one killer and the number one expense item in the healthcare system is still cardiovascular disease. And a lot of that is coronary artery disease, you know, when your arteries get blocked up with plaque, but there's also structures of the heart that get affected, and none more than heart valves, and that's where we step in. The science has moved dramatically over the past number of decades. The things that were available to our grandparents were almost nothing to our parents. There were crude options, but not so great, and then much better today. And the thing that turns us on is what's possible tomorrow.
Yeah, okay, and we are going to talk about all that. Let's do a little show and tell right now. You mentioned the kind of the crude instruments beginning. So what are we looking at here? I've got two things.
It's great. Actually, this heart valve, this is the Star Edwards valve. This is the first commercially available heart valve. So Lowell Edwards, who the company is named after, was an engineer in the paper and pulp industry, moved to Orange County, wanted to create an artificial heart in his retirement. This was 1958, if you can imagine. He was convinced to start with something simple like a heart valve, and he created this product, and that's really what launched Edwards Laboratories at the time.
And so what's that ball there? What does that do?
So you need to think about what this procedure is. When your heart valve fails, and it could fail for a number of reasons, one of the reasons it collects circulating calcium, and it hardly opens and closes anymore, so it restricts blood flow. So what the surgeon would do is actually saw open your sternum, open the chest, open your heart, and pump the blood through a heart-lung machine while they cut out a diseased heart valve, sew in the new one with this sewing ring, and then put you all back together. And then when your ventricle squeezed, it would push the blood through this, push the ball up, and then the ball would close and the ventricle would fill again, and this would happen with every heartbeat. And it saved a lot of lives. One of the downsides of this, you could get blood clots that would form on these struts, and if those broke away, it was a stroke. And so you would put heavy blood thinners in each patient, and that always caused the risk of bleeding inadvertently.
So obviously better to be alive than dead, but complications with
complications.
So what's this?
And so then later there was the development of tissue heart valves. They were first made by harvesting the heart valves out of pigs, which was the closest anatomy to humans, and they were treated with a special chemical solution so that they wouldn't be rejected. Those valves didn't last so long, maybe 7 years or so, so they had real downsides. And then Edwards was able to develop an engineered heart valve, and that's what this is. This is just shown with latex here, but think of this made with animal tissue, and these we were able to make last over 20 years. So it meant that a patient could get their heart valve replaced and not have to have blood thinners which was really a sort of a step back to their lifestyle.
And that's the state of the art right now, that valve there.
That would be
so
the
we're looking
leading
at the original one and
the leading
newest
heart
one.
valve in the world, right?
Okay,
yes.
very good. Something else. Explain. Here's some more valves. What are we looking at
Well,
here?
so then everything changed, and so there were some bright ideas that said, what if we made a heart valve and we sewed these 3 leaflets into a stainless frame, and then just before the procedure, you would squeeze this frame onto a catheter, and that's simply this. And picture this on a 4-foot long catheter, and now, with the help of an introducer, you would introduce this into somebody's upper thigh, and it would come up their aorta, around their arch, over the diseased heart valve. This balloon would be inflated. It would go back to its original size and immediately start beating, and you'd have replaced somebody's heart valve without opening their chest, without stopping their heart in under an hour.
Wow.
And that has turned into a reality.
That's called the transcatheter.
It's called the transcatheter heart valve, and it's changed quite a bit. As a matter of fact, I'll show you a little bit with those introducers.
Oh yeah, these things, I thought they were like Star Wars.
They were,
wands
they
or
were
something.
sort of miracles when they were first introduced. This is the size of the catheter that would go into your femoral artery, and most of our femoral artery is not quite that big, so there had to be a little stretching involved, which would sometimes cause injury. But as things have evolved, we're able to engineer heart valves that now get into very small packages. So they can go into introducers that are much smaller without the risk of patient injury. And so now we're approaching 200,000 patients that have had this procedure done this way. And it really restores their life, because you can picture when your heart valve is blocked and then finally it's opened again without going through the trauma of open heart surgery, you have blood that then is rushing to your brain and organs like it hasn't in a decade, and you immediately feel like you're full of energy and turn pink, and life changes for you.
And these kinds of advancements are very good, as you've indicated, for the patient. Also very good for Edwards. You guys are doing really well. In fact, I would think this is the best time ever for Edwards Lifesciences, right? I mean, your stock is at an all-time high. Sales continue to grow. Profits continue to grow. So you know, I mean, you got to be feeling pretty good about that.
I am feeling really good about it, and these are sort of the best of times, but then that's always the goal, is to be a little better every year. And what turns us on, I mean, the profits are nice, but what most important is the focus on these patients. When we're able to change the lives of these patients, and then in the process of doing that have a great business, it's about as rewarding a lifestyle as you can imagine. And you can imagine what we're focused on is to make sure that next year will be even the best year, and then 5 years from now and 10 years from now. And so we are aggressive investors in research and development to try and see just how far can we push the practice of medicine.
Right, and you always run that, how do you balance the research? The money you put in the research takes away from that bottom line, which of course a lot of investors want, but you've got to keep putting money in the research, right?
It's a big deal. When we first spun out of Baxter, which is almost 17 years ago now, we were investing around 5% of our sales in research and development. Now we'll be investing more than 15% of our sales. So we're one of the highest in the industry, but we've got a track record that backs it up. We're able to actually, it's not how much you spend, it's what really has impact on patients that matters.
So I have to ask you, I want to get back to the patients, but while you're talking about the finances of the company, you are now the largest public company in Orange County, in part because the two bigger companies have been acquired, Broadcom and Ingram Micro, and we see, and Allergan. And in Allergan, it's a health field company like yours. We're seeing all the time people getting bought. You guys are going so great. How come nobody's bought you?
Well, first of all, we don't spend a lot of time thinking about being bought. We're trying to run a great company.
But
and touch
they
a
got
lot
to be
of
looking
patients.
at you. Those guys are out there.
Well, and we're fortunate that we've had a lot of success. And it's when you have a value externally that's more or less equivalent with your internal value, then it gets tougher for people to pull that off.
In other words, you're pricey. You're very expensive because investors put, so you're not cheap. You're not cheap enough to buy right now.
We like to think it's fair.
So you just got to keep running at 100 miles an hour then.
Yeah, but that's stimulating, and that's what's so much fun, and we really get a kick out of it. And especially you think about what we get a chance to do, which is touch the lives of patients. It's huge.
Yeah, and talking about touching the lives of patients, we're looking at some pictures now of patients who are Edwards patients, and you have a patient day every year where these folks come together and it really becomes like a family. So doing this, it's different than selling someone a car. I mean, how does it get into a personal thing? Because I would think people deal with their doctors. They don't deal with the company that makes the device. So explain that relationship.
It's true. The physicians are the ones that the patients really come in contact with. But for us, because what we do is life-saving and critical, products like our heart valves, each one would have a serial number, so they would actually go to a specific patient. We get a chance to actually, in many cases, get to know these patients, and it brings our work to life. We put a lot of energy into helping our employees understand the impact of their work on patients. We'll even create short vignettes where someone will get a chance to talk about their life, how it deteriorated, how they went through a procedure, came out feeling so much better, living life again, and thanking our employees. And that's the kind of stuff that's so meaningful to us. And it really creates the culture that causes, you know, our reason for being. Our credo ends in helping patients is our life's work and life is now. So bringing these patients in is a big deal for us. We're still very close partners with clinicians. So we do work, you can think of us as almost the tool makers for the doctors, right? And that's what we do, and everything we've done has been in close collaboration with them. But we keep in mind the number one, our North Star, are these patients. And if we're always doing good things for patients, we're going to have a great company.
What's on the horizon? If you look 25 years out, how do you think things will improve from where they are now?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are going to happen broadly in medicine. In our particular field, we call it structural heart disease. So think of the structures of the heart. Today, the only way that those get addressed is literally with open heart surgery. So surgeons do miracles. They open your chest and they do miraculous things. But what if we could do those miraculous things through tiny holes? And we had good enough visualization to actually see inside, good enough tools to sew or connect or even replace heart valves. And there's 4 valves in the heart. There's a big health condition called congestive heart failure. That is one of the biggest burdens in the healthcare system. We think we can address those potentially with some really cool tools. And then we also have another one of our businesses that is critical care medicine, where we really take care of patients that are going through very difficult surgery or in an ICU. And in there, it's our ability to be able to have really smart diagnostic tools to actually see problems before they happen so that patients get faster recoveries.
In a way, especially with the transcatheter, are you dealing with people who, if they took better care of themselves, might not need to have a heart valve replacement? I mean, you're a fit guy. You're working out a lot.
Yeah.
You know, how do you feel about that? Because I could think cynically, oh, gee, the healthier people are, the fewer valves we're going to sell. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think with all of us, there's a component of our health that's driven by our genetics that we inherited from our parents, and there's not much you're going to do about that. But you can certainly improve your prospects by a healthy lifestyle. And so we're big believers in healthy lifestyle. We're big promoters of wellness for all of our employees inside Edwards. And, you know, if it does get desperate, then we're the ones to call. And, you know, either fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, there's still an awful lot of heart disease in the world.
Okay. We mentioned your #1 status as the public company in Orange County. I know you've been very involved with UC Irvine and other causes. Do you feel any responsibility, being the biggest company in Orange County, that you should be a civic leader?
Yeah, you know, we do, but it probably came even before we were the largest company. When we spun out of Baxter, became headquartered in Orange County, something changed. And it's one of those soft things, but this was our
Baxter
home.
is Chicago.
Baxter was Chicago-based, and now we cared more probably about Orange County. And we have one of the things that we aspire to do when we think about what kind of company we want to be, it's to give back to our communities. We want to be someone that gives more than takes. And so we like to be very supportive of our communities, and because we've been a successful company, we also have the ability to be philanthropic, and some of that philanthropy lands right here, and we like to think that through the engagement and volunteerism of our employees, and we have a goal that every single employee will do something every year, and the funds, that we're able to make life a little better in the OC.
So what, as I mentioned, there were 3 other big public companies that have left in the last couple of years, or they were acquired. Does that hurt Orange County? And what do you see happening here? Should we be concerned that Orange County's losing whatever mojo it's had that has attracted and grown companies like Edwards?
Yeah, you know, it's a good question. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. One of the things that happens when those kind of acquisitions happen is it throws off talent, and talent is one of the stimulus to make the county grow. So for example, I'm one of the founders and a believer in an organization called Octane, because I believe that having Orange County with a diverse source of jobs, not just focused on the travel industry and entertainment, but one that has a heavy component of high tech and med tech, would be really good for us. And Octane is an organization that pulls together talent and ideas and capital to be able to stimulate that kind of technology growth. And I think that's good for us. I don't think we want to lose it. And it remains to be seen just what happens here in the aftermath of Allergan and Broadcom being acquired. But I'm not pessimistic.
Yeah, and in fact, just so viewers, when you say an acquisition can throw off talent, what you mean by that is that some of the people either lose their jobs or decide to leave after you've had an acquisition, and then they go and start up their own companies.
Exactly, and small businesses turned out to be a great source of jobs and growth for all economies, and certainly the case in Orange County.
Yeah. Why is Orange County's known as a center for medical devices? Why is that?
You know, I think some of it goes back to its roots. When you have companies like Edwards Laboratories, like Allergan, like Beckman that started here, I think those become the beginning of a little ecosystem. So for example, within Edwards, amongst the first employees was a guy named Shiley and a guy named Hancock and a guy named Bentley, all that went out and started their own companies and headquartered right here, and those begot more. And I've actually seen a family tree of what can grow from a single company. But when you end up with clusters forming, and then you end up with sort of the services that go around those clusters, and then it becomes an attractive place to start your next company, and one thing leads to another. So nurturing that is something I think is important for our county.
And then companies like yours are giving money to the arts and stuff, so it's very nice. So is it easy for you to attract people to Edwards, the talent that you want, or is it tough getting people into Southern California?
It depends. I mean, we go for some pretty specialized talent. In general, we've been very fortunate and able to attract terrific talent. And we've got a pretty special campus and pretty special job opportunities. So for example, for young people coming right out of college, we have rotational opportunities for them to kind of find themselves, what they're really interested in, what they're good at. And that thing allows us to really bring some pretty special people into the company that helps us.
Let's get into regulations and politics a little bit. You live and die on FDA approvals. I've heard you sometimes complain a little bit that maybe it's slower than it should be. You had some saying we're number 41. What was that about?
Yeah, it's a good question. We do complain sometimes because we are a heavily regulated industry, and so we need the regulators to say okay before we can actually sell our products and commercialize them. In the case of this revolutionary technology, and here it was created by an American company right here, we were the 41st country in the world to get that product approved.
So 40 different companies approved
40 different countries first.
Does that hurt? Are people dying as a result of the slow approval? I mean,
sadly,
what difference does it make? Because in a way, you want to be safe. You want to make sure there's no problem.
Sadly, that's true. So in an effort, and again, these are well-intended people whose intention was, let's protect people from experimental products. Maybe we were being overly protective. I think actually FDA has taken that to heart, and they've been very thoughtful, I think even somewhat embarrassed by what happened, and they have picked up the pace. And as a matter of fact, we've been really impressed on how progressive their policies have become just over the past 5 to 10 years. and a lot of this in the aftermath of what was, I thought, an onerous approval process.
So it's getting
initially.
better.
It is getting better.
So it wouldn't be now we're number 41, maybe would change to what?
Well, so for example, the first one of these heart valves was approved in Europe 4 years before the U.S. The latest generation was less than a year. And
wow.
This is compressing more all the time.
Now, of course, if one person dies, if there's a screw up, then there's hell to pay, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's part of what drives the conservatism, right? So let's say something goes wrong and these products, or even more broadly, the therapy doesn't perform at a high level. The newspaper articles that come from that, the whippings that come from Congress and so forth, it discourages FDA from taking risk.
We're just being watchdogs, Mike. We're just doing our job.
No, but it discourages the regulators from taking risk the next time around, so they'll be more conservative, and the price to pay for that is the new innovations will take longer to reach patients.
Because of the kind of product you make, do you have to carry a lot of insurance? Do you have big insurance policies?
We do, but we actually don't carry a big burden of litigation in our company, and I think some of it is just because of the way that we do business. There's always some unfortunate few examples, but that's not a big burden on our company.
Okay. The Affordable Care Act, how's it going?
Well, you know, overall, I think what the Affordable Care Act did more than anything else was to make health care available to millions of people that didn't have it in the past. It's yet to be seen the impact that it might have on quality or the impact that it might have on cost. And so that's still coming. I think the hope was for companies like ours that there were more patients that were flowing into the system and therefore there would be rewards for that. Probably not the case for us. Most of the patients that are treated with Edwards product are over 65, already covered by Medicare, so I'm not sure that that math changed very much. But for other companies, it would have made a difference.
Yeah, so I guess that gets into that. And you, I think, weren't you the president or an official of the medical device makers?
Yeah,
you were sitting.
I was the chairman
you were
at the
sitting at the table with the president of the United States, right?
Yeah.
President Obama.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome, and this was back in '09. When there was the dream of passing the Affordable Care Act, and we had a chance to have discussions about that and go through that entire process. And it's interesting, I thought I understood healthcare, and I had spent my whole life, decades in this industry, but when you're actually faced with solving these big problems, like how do we make healthcare better, you realize how complex it is and how many people are involved in the treatment of patients.
If the president turned to you and said, Michael, I'm designating you medical czar, and whatever you tell me is what the law of the land is going to be, what's the one or two things you would do to improve the healthcare system?
Well, you know, I think some of what the system is pointed on, which is paying for results as opposed to just paying for doing, is the right idea. But I think heavy focus on quality is the key. As we improve the quality of healthcare, I think cost falls as well. And I think
we haven't seen it yet for the last 50 years.
Well, yeah, we could argue no, but there actually have been some significant gains. But the other part of this is to have the consumer in the game. I think if the consumer isn't paying for their health care, they don't end up treating it the same way. And for the consumer to have some skin in the game, it makes them better consumers of health care. It makes them more thoughtful. We want patients involved in the decision making, and I think it makes everything better.
Okay, one other thing in the Affordable Care Act, I'm sure some viewers have heard talk about this medical device tax, and that's you guys. You're the guys that stopped that. It's been put on hold now for 2 years. I think the idea was 2.3% of your profits should go into the healthcare system, if you will. And the argument is, hey, with the Affordable Care Act, everybody has insurance, you'll sell more, so pay a little more. What's wrong with that reasoning?
Yeah, so the logic when the Affordable Care Act was created, there were going to be these millions of people that were going to be treated that hadn't been treated, and somebody has to pay for that. So the thought was to pass the hat around between the hospitals and the insurance companies and the physicians and companies like ours, the medical device industry. And because there was no creative mechanism to have us contribute, they simply laid a tax on the industry. And unfortunately, that's probably not the best policy, because what that ends up doing is just discouraging companies from investing. So here's 2.3 less that you might put into R&D or you might put into creating jobs. And so it was really probably not accomplishing what was intended there. And I think we were able to effectively argue that no, actually we're part of the solution here. You don't want to tax the solution, and maybe some of the bad actors that actually cause bad health ought to be helped and participate in paying for the bill.
And you suspect that regardless of how this election turns out, there will be changes in the Affordable Care Act?
I do. I think there'll be small incremental changes. I sincerely doubt that there'll be anything that comes close to a repeal, but I think there's opportunities for improvement, and this medical device tax is a perfect example of that. I think there's too many good reasons and a large bipartisan portion of the Congress that agrees that it should go away.
Okay, well, Michael, it's been so great. Your own life story is interesting, and we did not have time to do that on this show, but we will on our open mic segment, which is coming up. And so thanks, and hang on.
Thanks you, Rick.
Okay, that's it for now. Thanks again to my guest, Michael Mussallem. You can watch this show and past shows by going to pbssocal.org or rickreiff.com. You can also catch our shows and our post-show open mic chatter on YouTube. And follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by 5 Point. 5 Point is an independent real estate development company with assets under management across California. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.
Memorial Care is transforming the way healthcare is delivered, keeping our communities and businesses healthy by guiding them on the path to wellness with easily accessible hospitals, physician offices, and outpatient centers. Memorial Care, leading the way.